Hello everybody, hope you're all having wonderful days. There's that whole Glaive Keo thing going on right now, however, I've already moved on. I don't care. The evidence is just so blatant that there's no point in really me making a video on it, and other creators are already making videos on it as well, so it's just kicking a dead dog, right? Now, what I do want to talk about in today's video is Buling. Buling is the most recent 4-star addition in the hit gacha game Wuthering Waves, okay? And that's pretty crazy. It's been a while since we've gotten a 4-star in this game. I believe it's the first one in this entire version and on the last banner of the version, right? And I will say, she's better than like the previously released new 4-stars, right? The ones that weren't in the game at base. So there is some merit to that. However, like everything, you know, some content creators are clickbaiting her value because that just gets more engagement. Buling is solid, but she's not great in my opinion, right? Now, it does make sense. Even though she has this really good amping for resonant skill damage dealers, and she can be used as an amazing option in those teams, she's not really best in slot for any of them, most likely because she actually seems to be targeted towards a future negative status DPS that's kind of built around Electro Flare. Electro Flare is one of the negative statuses in this game, and soon we are going to get a Fusion Burst DPS confirmed. However, we don't know yet about a, Electro Flare character, right? Some people are speculating it could possibly be Lucia. I also think that's actually a pretty good guess. However, there's really no confirmation at all. So until she gets this Electro Flare DPS, it's unlikely that she's actually going to be best in slot for anyone, right? She is a very good option in Prolova teams, but SK, I believe, is slightly better. She's also a usable option in a Jinchi team. However, SK is better. She's also a usable option in a Carlotta team, but once again, SK is actually noticeably better in that team, I believe, right? So she can be a usable piece. I'm not saying she can't. However, she's not really anything all that special. And the reason why I want to bring this up is because WUWA has actually fixed one of its biggest issues that it's had for a long time now. TOA isn't 2-team content. It's more than that. It's on average like 3 actually decently built team content if you are just an average casual player. So in this case scenario, there were only ever 2 generalist supports in this game, being SK and as well as Verena. So there was always this like missing slot for a third team where you couldn't use both of these characters in since they're already taken up, and I'd always pushed for this game to release another character who can have semi-generalist buffs at least on the same tier as SK, even if it isn't the same level, right? And the thing is, they're doing this. They are releasing more Nai soon on the second half of 3.0, and to be honest, the only way you can even make Buling competitive with like SK in these teams in the first place is S6, and since she's a newly released 4-star, I'm just gonna say it how it is, getting an S6 of a newly released 4-star is actually more difficult than getting an S0 of a new limited 5-star. On top of this, SK is part of the 1.x beginner banners that all new players get access to, and Verena is selectable through a standard selector banner. So literally all 3 of these characters are kind of widely available to a large majority of the player base. They're also some of the most highly owned characters in the entirety of the game. And once you have this like generalist support trio of Mornai, Verena, and as well as SK, well, Buling quite literally loses pretty much all her actual meta value, at least until the Electro Flare DPS comes out, which is what I was talking about earlier, right? Now, if you're someone who for God knows whatever reason decided to skip SK every single banner, then yeah, you can 100% use Buling, especially in resonant skill damage dealer teams. I'm not saying you can't. However, from a purely meta perspective, and assuming you actually do have SK and Verena, I'd highly recommend most people pull Mornai instead of Lene in 3.0, because once you do this, you just have a generalist support trio, and the new upcoming endgame in 3.0, I've also heard, is 3 teams. So you also have all supports for all those teams too, if you don't have a full best in slot team, which in my opinion is really high value. On top of this, something special about Mornai is that even if at base, generally, she isn't as strong as buffing as SK, the thing is, her vertical investment is actually significantly stronger. She has an S1 that allows anybody to activate 40% more damage bonus, which is pretty significant. She then has an S2, which gives 32% crit damage, and then she has an S1, which gives 20% crit damage. So she has a lot of vertical investment options if that's something that you're actually looking for, whilst SK, she doesn't really have the same level of vertical investment, as her weapon basically is just equal to variation, and it's not until you get to her S2 with the attack buff where it actually starts being a decent buff towards characters. However, still nothing all that significant. So that's just my opinion. You don't need to agree with me. You can keep using Buling and having fun with her, because after all, we haven't had a 4-star in a long time and it is a new character. I recommend a lot of people horizontally invest if they care more about characters and gameplay as compared to meta. However, strictly speaking from a meta perspective, I don't think Buling actually really matters all that much. The best I can really hope for is that she alleviates the jump from her to the premium limited option for the future Electro Flare DPS, so that it isn't anything as gross as Zanny without Phoebe and Cartethia without Chacona. Because everybody knows that these negative status DPSs, they have like the highest ceiling in the entirety of the game in terms of damage output, but the, you know, kind of negative about them is you need to get all the pieces to the puzzle to really start making them completely shine. So if you don't have their premium second slot supports, then it's going to feel like absolute shit as compared to if you did have those supports. But that's just my opinion at the end of the day, right? Personally, I'm going to probably go for Mornai. I think I can guarantee her as 0 in all likelihood. Hopefully they give a lot of pulls since it's a new version patch. And then after Mornai, because I'm not really interested in a lot of these Lahai Roy characters, I see a solid shot of me just either saving for Rebecca, or maybe if Mornai like really likes Ameth, and Ameth, the pink-haired girl, ends up being completely busted because she does look like the main focus of Lahai Roy from the way the trailers portrayed her, then I'll get that, right? However, for right now, I'm really only thinking about Rebecca, in all honesty. Let me know what you guys think about Buling if you've used her. What do you think about my opinion on her? Once again, I have to repeat this a bajillion times. However, you can play and pull whoever you want. This is just my analysis on Buling and her meta value. I don't think it's that significant. And I've also seen a lot of clickbait videos like, oh, Buling makes Jinshi meta. Buling makes Prolova a god. But like, not really, when the generalist supports can still do better, right? Love you all. Hope you have a great day. Hope you have a great night. And peace out.